that I saw this correction because guess who else we got? A James Gunn movie.
Yes. Um, so for our thing of the week, we watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is now on Disney Plus. Um,
Wait, okay, wait.
mm,
Before we get into this, what? Chris Hemsworth wasn't in that
was
movie, was he?
no, he wasn't. This is a bad poster.
Yeah. Uh, was he supposed to originally be?
Well,
Okay.
no, because
He,
the Guardians were in Thor: Love and Thunder.
yeah. So was there supposed to originally be a? Is this a fan made one? Because if that's a fan made one, that's a fantastic fan made poster.
It is, yeah. I actually prefer it over the one that they did.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find the real one.
Yeah, because the real one was
Oh,
not very good.
this one. Yeah. Uh, we'll leave the fan fiction version up
Yeah. um,
because it might have been fun to see Thor in a cameo there, but
yeah, yeah. But given the way the movie went, though, I don't know where they could have fit him in.
they would have almost had to have had Thor break off with the group in this movie rather than Love and Thunder,
Yeah.
which could have been done. But okay, we've been completely sidetracked by me noticing Chris Hemsworth's name up here, but ignoring Thor randomly. Oh, and also Groot is too young looking.
Yeah, yeah. Groot's older in the new movie
So
in Volume 3. Yeah.
to whatever Photoshop expert put this together, nicely done, man.
Yes, yes. Very good. And I may want to hire you someday. But yeah. So we watched the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and it picks up I think kind of after the holiday special,
Yep.
um, where they're all living on nowhere, and they've rebuilt nowhere, and of course we get of course the movie is this movie is basically Rocket's movie if you think about it.
Yep.
Because so what happens is they're all hanging out in nowhere, uh, and Star Lord Peter Quill he's still not over Gamora, and drinking himself into a stupor, and then of course that night uh, Adam Warlock shows up to kidnap Rocket, and he beats everybody up, and then Rocket gets hurt, and so they have to save Rocket. And of course they try to use like whatever the med pack thing that they have, but it doesn't work with his cybernetics.
Yeah. Specifically, this is why you have to vote for right to repair laws because the, Rocket has some proprietary technology that's designed to stop his heart if anybody tries to tinker with him.
Yes, and so they have to seek out the company that put all the cybernetics in him, and we find out that it was all given to him by the High Evolutionary.
This marks the High Evolutionary's, I would say, third non-comic book appearance that I'm aware of, because he was in an episode of X-Men the animated series. He was actually it was when they got into Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's background.
Oh, okay.
Um, he was actually the main villain of the forgotten Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon that took place on Counter Earth.
Oh,
That was basically Marvel's attempt to be Batman Beyond.
oh yeah. Okay.
And
I
then
vaguely remember that show. Yeah.
and now this.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. And so they go out to try to. They go out to this. They find out that this base that's basically this like organic thing, and then they run into. Of course, they get help from the Ravagers,
Which means Gamora.
which means Gamora. Yeah, and Sly Stallone.
Yep. I keep wondering every time I see Sly Stallone in something, how long are we can we possibly have Sly for left? Which is a grim thought, but like he basically looks like he hasn't aged in the last 10 years.
No, he's looking great. I mean, I think mid 70s.
Yeah,
Um,
I heard somebody say that the difference between how Arnold looks and how Stallone looks these days is the difference between Arnold being a steroid guy, where Stallone was a HGH guy, or
mm,
at least later in life he was an HGH guy.
yeah, yeah, that could have something to do with it. Um, but yeah, so they sneak into this company base thing, and of course one of the security guards working there is Nathan Fillion,
Yeah,
um, and they go in and I'm trying to remember what happened. Well, yeah,
it
they
doesn't look
sneak
good.
in. Yeah, it doesn't look good. Yeah, they sneak in. They're wearing these Among Us spacesuits.
Yeah, and so they managed to find out where this is, and or where managed to find out where Rocket's crater was, and that turns out to be this planet called Counter Earth,
Mhm.
which is from the comics, where it's this old sci-fi idea that pops up occasionally. Like I think I think there was like a little bit of basis behind it, where they thought there might have been like some gravitational anomalies on something, where they said, oh, there might be a planet on the like that happens to be on the direct opposite side of the sun from the Earth, and then people
Uh,
went to the races with it. Or well, possibly some, I'm misremembering that, and some smart sci-fi author said, hey, if I want a planet that has Earth-like conditions, I can just say, hey, we just never noticed this planet because it's in the one spot we could never observe it, because it
uh,
happens to move at the same rate as Earth and be the same size as Earth and have the same orbital plane as Earth.
yeah, yeah, that could possibly be true. Yeah, you never know.
Well, I mean, at this point, we've put out enough probes that we would have spotted it, unless the government is covering it up.
Yes.
But anyway, so they end up on this counter Earth, which is full of animal people like Rocket.
Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of like the island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah, very much like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all through this, we get these flashbacks to Rocket's creation
Mhm.
in this lab with his friends, like a walrus and a bunny
Sea
and an
otter.
otter,
Yeah.
who all just have horrific things happen to them.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, very, very, you know, the entire time you're going to these flashbacks, you're kind of going, okay, something really bad happened to them.
Yeah, because like it's not like Rocket is out there with his three animal buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, yeah. Yeah. Um, and
I, I will say that
yeah.
the otter had a better end than in the or she had a better end in the Telltale game that they came out with.
Oh, okay.
Because at least like as memory serves, Rocket buried her somewhere natural, like kind of where she always wanted to be.
Oh. Mm. Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, that part was very sad. Which James Gunn, by the way, is very good at doing. He's
Yeah,
good at tugging your heartstrings.
yeah. Um, and so yeah, so basically, of course, the heroes fix Rocket, but the High Evolutionary hits the restart button on Counter Earth. Like, well, time to go make another civilization.
Yeah, and of course, what ends up happening is like Quill and Groot go in and are able to get the information that they need and make this big daring escape, but Mantis, Drax, and Nebula are like, "Oh no, they're still on the ship," and that's like,
As they fall past them.
right, yeah,
Uh, Like that's this movie in a nutshell. It's like it has a very serious situation, but I think they do a pretty good job of having moments of levity. There's
hmm
some jokes that just don't land because it's too much bathos, which
yeah,
is a fancy writing word for emotional whiplash or like unwanted comedy after a moment of seriousness.
yes,
But yeah, so ultimately, as we all know, I mean, the High Evolutionary wins, and he's going to reset Earth, and it's up to the Inhumans to try to stop him. No, that's not that's not what happens remotely. That- but
What?
all the Guardians get to a good place with their character arcs, but the core Guardians group basically disintegrates.
Yeah. So yeah, at the end of the movie, Quill decides to go back to Earth. Mantis just decides she needs to go. She needs to find herself.
Oh, by the way, spoilers.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Spoilers. Sorry.
I was doing it too, and I was, oh wait,
Yeah. Yeah.
when we separate this out, make sure you say spoiler review.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, I will. Yeah. And uh, and so then, well, although we should probably mention why the High Evolutionary wants Rocket.
Yes, because Rocket is the only creation he has ever made with an imagination.
Mhm.
He was able to spot a flaw in one of his machines that the High Evolutionary and all of his other subordinates couldn't.
Right. Yeah. And so after Rocket escapes, he just becomes obsessed with him and wants to rip him open and study him again. That's why he sends Adam Warlock after him, who let's be honest was treated like a joke throughout the whole
Yeah,
movie.
Adam Warlock was kind of there because they had set him up at the end of the first Guardians movie, and James, knowing that he wasn't long for Marvel, was like, "I'm just gonna tie up every loose end that I made."
Yeah, yeah, and he kind of puts him in there, sort of like what Sam Raimi did with Venom in Spider-Man 3.
Right, where except Venom and Sam Raimi at least got like a foundational moment, and like you got to see his origin kind of play out just on fast forward.
Right. Yeah.
Adam Warlock is just one of those golden people from the
Second
uh,
movie. Yeah.
second movie.
Yeah, and the tall woman from the second movie's in there too.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
yeah, and Rocket ends up becoming it's like a found family thing where Rocket ends up being the nucleus of a new Guardians of the Galaxy.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the new Guardians it's Rocket, Nebula, Drax.
No, Drax
Oh,
wasn't
that's
part of it. He left too,
right. Okay.
because he wanted to like take care of the kids they rescued.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Um,
Uh,
Groot was there,
Groot. Yeah.
and then there was like one of the kids he had rescued who had psychic powers or something.
Right.
Oh,
And
and
then
the psychic Soviet dog.
right and Adam Warlock.
Yep. So I guess Adam Warlock. Yeah, I reject the idea that Adam Warlock had a point in this movie
Yeah.
uh, outside of paying off the Easter egg.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
because basically anything he did, you could have had anybody do it. Um,
Yeah.
but let's talk about. We've kind of gone over the plot. Let's talk about good, bad, ugly.
Yes.
And you know what? Just to end on a high note, let's start ugly first. Adam
Okay.
Warlock,
Yeah.
pretty pointless.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, like I said, he was kind of there for comic relief,
Hmm.
and even then, it was kind of like, okay, come on, man, don't kick him when he's down.
Yeah, and he was just a complete himbo
Yeah.
because he had just hatched from the egg in the end of the first movie. So,
Hmm.
but he was also it was like a special needs Superman is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of phrasing it.
Um, as far as the other characters, I would say like the strangeness about this movie is that while it is Rocket's movie,
Hmm.
um, you don't get a lot of Rocket interacting with the main group because he spends like half the movie in a catatonic state.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he's just yeah. I noticed that too. Yeah, most of Rocket's scenes are just in the flashbacks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, which we'll get to that in the good. The ugly part of the good
Yeah.
is if you have a problem watching animals being tortured and afraid and in awful situations, then
Mhm.
this movie is going to be very difficult for you to get through.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we're talking like the otter has robotic arms because her front legs were ripped off.
Yeah. Yeah. The walrus and the bunny have their legs taken off, and
Yeah, the walrus gets around like a fake wheelchair,
yeah.
which I think is bolted to him.
Yeah. Yeah. There's you will definitely hate the High Evolutionary by the end of the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's before he like wipes out a whole planet to start over again.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's well, we'll get to that with the good, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is there anything else that you would qualify as outright ugly?
I don't know if I would say ugly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if we're out of uglies, we can move on to bad things that
Yeah.
could have been more than they were.
Yeah. Um, I guess the CGI was pretty good. Not great.
See, this yeah the CGI was really convincing for like the flashback animal scenes.
Yeah.
I didn't really detect any problems with it, but maybe after seeing the Flash, I'm just blind to bad CGI. It's like textures and
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah. Uh, there were a couple of scenes in like the scene with the giant tentacle things. I
Oh
can
yeah.
um that looked a little that looked a little rough, kind of like what I saw with Shang-Chi or Eternals, where it was
hmm
pretty obvious green screen, but I think they kind of get away with it because it's really dimly lit.
Ah, dark lights, the CGI artist's best friend.
Yes. Yeah. Um, trying to think. Well, go ahead with
I would
yeah.
say like the so I don't know if you're like me, but I watched the first two movies and I could not wait to go listen to the soundtrack.
Mm,
I don't know
yeah.
that I felt that this time at all.
Yeah, there were a couple of songs in there that were a little obscure, I think. A lot of 2000s like emo music, which
Yeah, yeah, because they got the Zune at the end of two, they were able to expand the eras that they were doing.
yeah. What what I thought was funny was they played Beastie Boys "No Sleep Till Brooklyn."
Right.
I'm
And
like,
I've heard multiple people go, "Where was Intergalactic? You
yeah.
dummies!"
Well, I part of me wonders if they didn't pick that song because of Chris Pratt, because he was Mario, and
Mm,
that song was in Mario.
yeah, though. Yeah, I guess they would have had time to go in and edit that out. Like, darn it, they stole our song.
Yeah.
Um, I would say those are the last things I would call bad. So it's like this is not a perfect movie, but you have pretty minor or Adam Warlock, I would say, is a major downside because he just kind of eats up time.
Yeah.
Not a lot of payoff, but like most of this is like most of it's like most of this movie is good.
Yes.
Um, so like getting so let's if we kind of run through the characters. Groot is kind of flat like Groot always is,
Hmm.
but that's the joke with the character.
Yeah. Yeah. He only has 3 words that he says. Although at the end of the movie, he does say something different.
He breaks the rule.
Yes.
Chris Hemsworth was really a letdown in this movie. He was like he was
Pratt.
barely in it. Oh,
Yeah,
making a
yeah.
dumb
Okay.
joke about the.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't me
Okay.
forgetting
Sorry.
names again.
Okay.
All right. Chris Pratt. I'd say that Chris Pratt and Time Lost Gamora have a very understandable character arc.
Mhm. Yeah, because he's obviously is still madly in love with her, but she's just like, I have no idea who you are. I mean, she couldn't even remember his name.
Yeah,
She kept calling him Quinn.
and it would almost be better for him if that Gamora had conveniently died at the end of Endgame, or
Hmm.
if they just hadn't done the time loss thing altogether, because he could have at least had a clean break. But it's like he can't move on because there's like this idea that if he that if he just did the right things,
Hmm.
then he could like get his Gamora back, like the hack, the cheat code to unlock the feelings that she had for him.
Right. Yeah. Well, and of course, she's probably in this movie because she was under contract.
Uh, well, and also they had like an actual, unlike Adam Warlock, this wasn't just a checkbox. They had an actual character arc to fill.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, Nebula had a very interesting one in that her arc was intrinsically linked to Mantis and Drax.
Yeah. Yeah. She definitely evolves. Her evolution from being Thanos's, what would you call it?
Lackey.
Lackey. Yeah. To to being her own person, and then still kind of. I mean, she's a good person now, but at the same time, she struggles with talking to Drax, and she makes these assumptions about Drax that, like, oh, he's an idiot, he doesn't, it's like, well,
And
no.
Mantis for that matter.
And Mantis, yeah.
Yeah, like just getting tired of his dumb guy shtick,
Yeah.
which I said a few of the jokes didn't land. A lot of them were Drax dumb guy shtick jokes, but I guess it built up to a purpose. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, um, Drax. So special effects wise, I think I mentioned this at the time. I
yeah,
was astounded that Drax was actually superhumanly strong, which sounds weird to say,
yeah.
but I can't think of any feats of strength in the other things where he appeared where he seemed significantly stronger than like Captain America or or, or anything like that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this movie, he was just tossing dudes 50 feet, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
He can do that?
Yeah.
It explains in that one bad, really, or that one really badly CGI'd thing from Secret Wars that everyone's been showing around that Amelia Clark bothered to copy his strength.
Oh. Mm.
But and he and Mantis are just comedy gold together.
Yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah. Yeah, when they're at the hospital place, and she touches the guard and says, "You're madly in love with him." And he's like, "Oh, jeez."
It's even better that you're madly in love with him,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Ah, every time."
Yeah. You're like, "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh, pretty good." Yeah, yeah.
So, and then Bradley Cooper as Rocket. It's his movie. He does a
Mhm.
good job with it. You don't get as much of classic side or quipping Rocket as you might like, but it's to a purpose.
Yes. Yeah. And once you see his backstory, it explains that scene in the first movie when he gets drunk. He's like, "I didn't ask to be ripped apart and then put back together." And yeah.
Mhm. Yep. And then there's the character who isn't on here, who is the most important, the High
Yes.
Evolutionary.
Yes.
Good God. Yeah. I I wish if you could go back in time and whisper in somebody's ears, he's your Kang, that guy is your High Evolutionary.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
He's your big baddie for this phase.
Yeah, that guy was. What's his name again?
Oh, I can't remember.
High Evolutionary. Uh, Chikuri Iwuji. I
Okay.
hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
But uh, he was great. Like you hated that man
Yeah.
very quickly because he's like a classic mad scientist archetype. Like the line that sums him up is, "For God's sake, there is no God. That's why I had to step in."
Yeah. Yeah, that's a villain archetype that is not used in anymore. Is the mad scientist, and I'm glad we got to see one of those.
Yeah, he's like a mad scientist slash eugenicist. Like he just wants to correct the mistakes of the world and make a perfect civilization, which is why. And he doesn't see anybody as like actually valuable. All of Rocket's friends were just rough drafts before the animal people.
Right. Yeah. And and he has this whole like, and Imperial Cool even brings up he has this whole RoboCop thing with his face
Yeah,
on the yeah
yeah. Rocket had his way with his face after his friends died,
yeah.
and
Mm,
he has kind of like a Doctor Doom thing where he refuses to let anybody see the imperfection in his face.
right. Yeah. Yeah. He was yeah he was probably one of the best villains in we've seen in Marvel. And, you know.
Yeah, I mean he had a way. Uh, I would say the Ego had a pretty good setup too.
Hmm.
He definitely had a higher or a better setup than the Accuser from the Ronan the
Oh,
Accuser from the first Guardians.
oh yeah. 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 And I just liked how like when I was saying that you really you really hate this guy and the Guardians really hate him. Like the
Yeah,
scene when Quill and Groot are there, and he's monologuing with his whole evil shtick, and goes like, "Yeah, yeah, I don't care."
yeah, uh, yeah. To kind of go back to Quill for a second, I think he's the most consistently written character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Hmm.
In that, like his through line is he is a stunted man child who can. And they even get into this in the movie where he can't. He because he lost his mother at such a young age, he just clings to people, like especially women. Just like he's like hopping from lily pad to lily pad in the pond of life, as Drax of all people manages to point out.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and and of course this whole thing is he keeps losing the people he loves. Like you say,
right,
his mom, and then Yondu, and then Gamora, and it's just like, yeah, he's
yeah, it's why he goes back to Earth.
yeah,
Um, yeah, everyone turned in a good performance, and it was this like the last Marvel movie I was interested in. Um, I think I would have ended up going if they'd had a smart release strategy and they had, waited more than a few months to put this in streaming. I probably would have gone to see it in theaters, but
yeah. Same here.
Disney isn't where it's at because they make smart decisions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They just we'll just dump it on the streaming service 2 months after release. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. At least I think they waited 90 days this time instead of 45.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's
It's
it,
a little better. Yeah.
yeah. And I can see why this is the Marvel movie that did the best this year because while it has some hard themes to it, it's an enjoyable ride.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Speaking of people enjoying rides,